My name is John. I am 32 years old. I have been married to my wife Jane for the past 5 years. Lately, I feel like the person I wake up next to every morning has become a complete stranger. Jane and I met when we were both starting our careers. From our first conversation, I realized that we shared many of the same values and aspirations. I had recently graduated from trade school, where I learned very specialized computer programming and coding skills. In the beginning, I worked a hard and low-paying job, but over time I proved my worth and gained a reputation in my field. Now, my talent and references carry more weight than formal education. Jane went on to pursue further in higher education. She quickly assumed a management position in her company. Early in our relationship, this created a little friendly rivalry between us. I remember complaining about middle managers at my job, seeing them as an obstacle to getting the job done. Jane defended them, believing they were necessary to provide leadership and ensure resources were properly allocated. But my manager just sets unrealistic deadlines to look good in front of management, I complained after a long day. And then I have to pull all-nighters to fulfill what he promised the clients. I'm sure he has a lot more information about the big picture than you do, Jane objected. Good managers guide and motivate teams. I learned not to tell her about my frustrations at work. She never even met my manager, but she was always on his side. I could also tell that Jane resented the fact that I didn't go to college. Early on in our relationship, she talked about me going back to college. After I told her about the loans and debt, she dropped the idea. When we got married, we both had good-paying jobs and little debt. I thought we had equal opportunities. But about 2 years ago, I started working for a new company with an owner who quickly saw my potential. He spoke directly to me and gave me the opportunity to tackle new challenges. Within a year, I was already earning 50% more than Jane. My new manager also works closely with his team. The first 4 years of our marriage were generally great. But when the pandemic hit and we both started working from home, I began to feel Jane slipping away from me. Our communication went downhill. Joint activities and intimacy faded. Jane began staying late at the office with coworkers. Her emotional distance grew each week, and I felt like a roommate rather than a husband. Working from home during the pandemic had clearly taken its toll on my marriage. Although Jane gradually became more and more distant, I tried to maintain some sense of normalcy between us. Every day, I kept a routine that separated my home life from my work life. In the mornings, I woke up early, had breakfast, showered, and put on casual clothes before walking the short distance from our bedroom to my home office. I can't stand wearing ties, but as I dressed, I set myself up for productive work. Jane laughed at my work attire, saying I was pretending like home was a corporate building. Meanwhile, she'd get out of bed and go straight to the computer in pajama pants and a t-shirt. "Aren't you at least going to brush your teeth before meetings?" I asked one morning. "Oh, please." Jane waved me off. "No one cares what I look like in video conferences. I'm still doing my job." While Jane left her home office door open during the day, chatting with coworkers and friends, I mostly kept my door closed. The only video meeting I had on a regular basis was a daily meeting with my programming team. "Why do you have to hide for your little meetings?" she asked me that same day. "I just want to avoid interruptions and extraneous noise," I calmly explained. "It's no big deal." "And I don't like secrets," Jane replied. In retrospect, I should have recognized the projection in Jane's behavior. She was the one who became more evasive and secretive with me. After a few months, Jane started going to her office a couple days a week when they reopened. She jumped at the chance to get out of the house and be around people again. I can't blame her. I missed it too, even though my job was still completely remote. Unfortunately, returning to an office environment exposed Jane to negative influences. She became friends with a trio of female coworkers about the same age as her and a few years older than her. 2 of them were divorced single mothers. I began to notice that Jane was coming home later on the nights she went out. When I asked who she was spending time with, She would answer vaguely. "Oh, just some girls from work," she'd reply. We went out for a drink. One weekend morning, Jane nonchalantly asked me to wipe down her old iPad, saying she wanted to give it to her niece. While she was out running errands, I unlocked the device and saw that she was on the WhatsApp app texting someone. My heart clenched as I looked at the latest messages and pictures she was exchanging with her boss. I copied everything to a secure cloud drive and then did a full factory reset. Instead of immediately confronting Jane, I calmly set up a meeting with a lawyer. I knew I needed help with my divorce. The attorney helped me track my finances, freeze my credit, and gather additional evidence against Jane over the next few weeks. I was devastated, but felt I had a plan. Jane continued to ignore me, staying late after work and ignoring my questions about her schedule. The closeness between us was completely gone. Until a month ago, she had ridiculed me for suggesting that she see a counselor, claiming that our relationship was perfectly fine. Now, I saw her lies and secrecy. The woman I had loved for the past 5 years had become a stranger to me. With the help of a lawyer, I spent several weeks gathering evidence of Jane's ongoing affair. As painful as it was to learn the truth, having a plan of action and legal guidance gave me a sense of control. I methodically documented Jane's behavior and followed the guidelines for dividing finances in preparation for filing for divorce. Throughout this emotional cycle, I maintained my composure when interacting with Jane. She was oblivious to my knowledge of her betrayal, continuing to come home late after hanging out with coworkers. One day, returning well past midnight, Jane found me sitting, waiting for her. "You're early tonight," I said evenly as Jane took off her shoes. Her lipstick was smeared, and her blouse was buttoned unevenly. "Well, lost track of time chatting with the girls," Jane replied nonchalantly, the smell of wine wafting off her. "Anything interesting happened today?" I asked, hoping she would admit to her sneaky cheating. Instead, Jane laughed. "With work? Not really. Just office drama about budgets and restructuring." I realized that Jane would never admit the truth willingly. The next morning, I emailed my boss and asked for a week of personal leave, citing family issues. I then informed my attorney that divorce papers could now be filed. That same morning, Jane, as she left for the office, only threw a parting, "Have a good vacation." My anger at her had reached a boiling point. Late that afternoon, I heard Jane's key turn in the lock of our front door. She trudged into the kitchen, clearly drunk again. "Oh, it's a good thing you're still awake," Jane muttered. "I wanted to talk to you about the money. The girls said I should demand more monthly entertainment money from you. Since you make more, it would be fair." I took a deep breath, remaining eerily calm. "Actually, I need to discuss something with you too." Jane rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ugh, this better not be about counseling again. I told you we're good." I reached across the counter for the envelope containing the divorce papers. "You got the summons." Jane froze for a moment. Then she burst into shrill laughter. "This is a joke, isn't it? There's no way you're leaving me." I held her gaze, my expression serious. "Even if you go for it, I'll get half," she continued, her tone turning nasty. "If you stay, at least you'll have sex once in a while." Her words ignited a fierce anger in me that I had been suppressing for weeks. At that moment, Jane showed her true face, her rotten face, and her selfish nature. This was not the woman I had fallen in love with. That night, I stayed over at a friend's house for the night. My lawyer had warned me many times not to put my hands down too soon. I remembered with satisfaction Jane's stunned face as I slammed the envelope shut. But I also feared that now that I had moved out of the apartment, I had lost my legal advantage. The next morning, I explained the whole situation to my lawyer friend. He once again assured me that I held the winning cards, since I had so much documentary evidence on my side. "We'll need to get you back in the house right away so she can't claim denial," he added. "But I love that you're finally standing up for yourself. Just stick to my advice going forward if you want to maximize your compensation." Over the next few days, Jane flooded my phone with whiny messages and voicemails. She desperately wanted to talk, but on the advice of my lawyer, I didn't answer. I left her to guess and worry, as I had done for weeks after learning of her infidelity. A week after she was served with the divorce papers, Jane showed up on our doorstep wanting to talk. I decided that I would allow her to do so, but only if there were neutral witnesses and videotaping everything that happened. I wanted to end this story peacefully if possible. When Jane arrived, I felt surprisingly calm. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table while our two friends watched in silence. My acquaintance was recording everything on her phone. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Jane began in a shaky voice. "I know I really hurt you. Everything happened so fast with my boss. It was like I was watching a movie instead of living my real life. But it was exciting, like an adrenaline rush." I just shook my head. "I don't care why you did it, Jane. Nothing can justify it." "You're right," Jane agreed, looking at her hands. "I guess I was hoping that if I told you more about how it happened, you'd realize that it wasn't the real me. I got sucked into something toxic and lost myself." Her excuses reminded me of why I'd fallen out of love with this woman. "You're done with the past. It's going to change now, regardless of your reasons," I said. Jane wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. "Do we have a chance to start over? Should we try seeing a counselor?" "My trust in you and us is shot," I replied. "I'm just moving forward with the divorce. I've already divided our savings and changed the auto payment on the mortgage." Jane sat silent for a moment, comprehending what I had said. I noticed dark circles under her bloodshot eyes. Obviously, the end of the affair and the harsh confrontation with me had taken its toll on her. "To be completely honest, I'm feeling pretty bad right now," Jane finally muttered. "The girls at work have kind of turned their backs on me after the whole boss thing, and I could get fired any day now. They're demanding money or the affair will go public. I'm scared." Although Jane looked genuinely upset, I had little sympathy for her. "So report them for blackmail. Or quit your job. Lying and deceit got you into this mess," I said bluntly. Jane looked at me pleadingly. "I know I don't deserve your help after everything that's happened, but I just don't know what to do now, where to go from here. Please, if you still care about me, what should I do?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "What you're doing now is completely within your power. Hire a lawyer to defend yourself. See a therapist to get to the bottom of why you're self-sabotaging yourself. Confess to your boss so he can't keep blackmailing you. And then change your life. Stop being a bitch." Jane nodded silently. After a long pause, she asked in a thin voice, "So we definitely can't meet with a counselor sometime, or?" I stood up from the table, signaling that the conversation was over. "I'll contact your lawyer. Take care of yourself, Jane." After Jane left, I experienced a great sense of relief and lightness in my soul. The woman I loved had been completely consumed by her own poor choices. Now everything she did next was her own responsibility. I had gained clarity. It was time to close this painful chapter for good and start fresh in my new reality.